I think it's one of the reasons why people love going to live concerts, not just because of the musical energy, but also because they are witnessing a level of agreement that, goes up to the level of art. And, when you're talking about, this split second timing of being able to join a musical line when you've been resting or something like that, and you are actually not just agreeing with them, you're learning about compassion because you literally have to put yourself in another person's shoes to be able to play the rest of that phrase.
Gabriel, so great to meet you here on Zoom.
Pleasure to meet you.
I saw your YouTube channel as well, but do you usually do it more in podcast, or do you do your channel as a visual?
Well, usually as a visual, the podcast, which I haven't added to in years right now, there are sort of semi plans to get it going again.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
but the rest of it is kind of eclectic. Some of it's conducting, some of it's violin. The original intent was to do something during the pandemic, and at the time I wasn't doing any conducting. Of course, nobody was doing much of anything,
Yeah.
but um, the so I just wanted to get some violin stuff going, and actually the thought was that if I could create these orchestral sounds going on, I could actually play concerti by myself for
Oh,
people
yeah.
who,
Mhm.
yeah, because then I got this big screen, and I actually went into nursing homes,
Really?
and yeah, during the pandemic, because mostly because the people in nursing homes, they didn't get out much to concerts at all, and it was always a very, very special event for them, and of course there were no more concerts going on for like 2.5 years. So I would go into nursing homes and just mask up and have an orchestra playing behind me and give them that.
Amazing. But
Yeah,
that's so, I mean, it was such a difficult time for everybody, but yet a lot of positive things came from it and a lot of very creative ways of thinking, that we never would have thought about when things were normal.
right, right.
Mm.
And it occurred to me that, I mean, this thing that we do is all about connecting and connecting people
Yeah.
and connecting what we do.
Mm.
So that's what I had set out to do, despite the circumstances.
But how lovely that you also, I mean, you have the violin, so it's also something, it's not like a piano that you have to have the
Yeah,
big instrument. You can
carted
carry
around.
it around.
Well, I mean, in a sense, I carted around my orchestra in a sense
Oh, okay.
because I had to get um, this projector that would project the video onto the screen,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I wanted to be able to just play right in front of the screen as if I were playing in front of the orchestra. So they make these projectors that you can stick like right in front of the screen and not have to, be like 10 feet away or something like that. So, I had this big, huge screen that could barely fit into my car, and and the projector and all of this equipment, and it'd take me like 20 minutes to set the whole thing up, and then play for a half hour. So
Okay. But
it was tough.
but the love for violin, at what age did you start playing the violin?
Oh, when I was 6 years old,
Mm.
and um, that's a great story. My whole family were musicians,
Okay.
and at the time, a lot of people may not believe it or even remember this, but there was a time when there was only one TV in the house and it was black and white. and, and you couldn't just sit on the couch and go like this. You had to actually get up and turn the knob in order to change the channel. And there were only 13 channels, so there's only so much you could do on a Saturday. And so what my family did was get together and make music on
Oh,
Saturdays.
lovely.
Yeah, and um, the my father actually had gone to Juilliard for composition, and my parents had met at the High School Performing Arts in New York, and my sister went there, and she was a singer and a pianist, and my brother was playing the trumpet at the time, and I was 6 years old, and I was just kind of sitting there doing nothing, and so I said, well, I want to take part in this, and they said, okay, um, why don't you play the violin? And I just looked at them. I said, what's a violin? What is that?
Oh.
Know what that is. So they showed it to me, and I started playing, and I took to it rather quickly. Apparently, I don't really have a memory of that. It's so long ago, but um, at around 6 months into it, my dad actually welcomed me into the TV room. Speaking of the TV, and of course, our parents, never did something like that. Like, come in, I want you to actually watch something on the TV, right? And it was a documentary about Pinka Zuckerman, and about his career. I guess he was in his you know late 20s, early 30s, or something like that. But the um, the documentary was about him and his career, and I learned that he started when he was 6 as
Oh,
well.
okay.
And I, had, got, a basic familiarity of how to play the violin and what the possibilities were at that point. And I was just astounded by what this man was doing with this instrument and how beautiful it was. And, it said on the documentary, he started practicing 3 hours a day very, very early on. And so I decided that's what I was going to do. I was so inspired.
Wow. So
Yeah,
yeah, so that was really the inspiration then for you.
exactly, exactly. And I started doing it, and I progressed rather quickly. When you grow up, doing something, and you don't really have an idea of what the rest of the world is like. You're just kind of in your own planet, really. People throw around lots of words, about how talented you are, and how good you are at it. But you don't really know. You're just like doing it. I grew up in New York City, and I played in a youth symphony, and my hometown hall at the youth symphony was Carnegie Hall. I didn't know that that was something incredible or special. I mean, it felt incredible and special for sure, but not like how everybody else, views it in the world. It was just where I went to go play. Um,
But
but
sorry, I and my daughter and I had this conversation just the other day about really what motivates. Is it a teacher? Is it the environment? Is it um, there must be something in each artist that's the motivation, or that's the sort of the drive behind it. And here you're saying this, and it's really interesting that you had the drive, and it's sort of by doing your own thing and motivating yourself that you were able to do it.
Yeah. I mean, certainly my parents, played a huge part in that, for good and for ill as well.
Yeah.
And the, you know, but that initial impetus came from watching that documentary. And very soon after that, I started playing in orchestras when I was 8. And I I have a visceral memory of seeing 30-second notes for the first time. It was the Beethoven Symphony was the first piece that I played in an orchestra at 8 years old. And, it was one of the slower movements, but, he had written it in 30-second notes. So it looked like this black page that was down there. And my eyes were, goggled at it. But, I just kind of went along with all the other teenagers in the orchestra and soon was just kind of doing it again. When you're young and you don't know any better, you tend to do a lot of things people would consider brave. But
But do you think that's also in the way you have done it, that you have more? I wouldn't say freedom, but maybe courage is the word. Where you sort of went on and just did your thing.
well, sort of. I mean, when you start that early, and I didn't start as early as some others. Many prodigies, when they start, they're like 3 or 4 or something like that. So they already had 2 years on me. But like I said, I progressed pretty quickly. And the it was something that was just something I had always done. And because my parents were very involved in classical music. I mean, my in a sense, I was actually a conductor before I was a violinist, although I didn't realize it until years later. My dad used to put on records. You remember those things, the records that
Yeah.
turned into.
Those were
And
the days.
those were the days, right? Snap, crackle, pop, and all of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But he used to put on the Rite of Spring and would put me on his back and kind of dance around to it. And we used to do this crazy dance to the Rite of Spring and Carmina Burana. And this is when I was like 4 and 5. And there was one, and then they took me to see the movie Fantasia, and I came home pretending I was Mickey Mouse, that I was going like this
Oh,
to
sweet.
and they got me I was so into it that they got me the album, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and I would, and it's funny because the Sorcerer's Apprentice was actually at the B side. The reason why they got me the album was for Peter and the Wolf on the A side.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but I used to play on my little Victrola, the Sorcerer's Apprentice, and pretend I was Mickey.
How
Uh,
wonderful.
for
Yeah.
many years, and that's the thing, when it's in your blood
Mhm.
like that, you don't even think about it. It's something that it's like such a part of you that you just do it. And there were times growing up, when I certainly felt trapped, when it wasn't a positive experience, when I was like, well, what am I going to do? This is like the only thing I know how to do, and I have to practice and work a whole lot to do it. And you're not going to make very much money doing it, and all those things. When you start thinking about them, that occur to you, they're, not necessarily, positive. But because it's something that's like it's like saying, I would, do you want your arm with you, or something like that? Of course I want my arm. Maybe my arm is troublesome to me, for in some way or something like that. But of course I would want my arm. And that's what making music has always been for me.
Wow, this actually, it's music for you, but it's this project of mine for me. I
Yeah,
also sometimes people can't understand sometimes why I do it, but I have this feeling that you are describing now. It's like I cannot imagine not doing it anymore. So it's that thing. I do understand. But
right.
amazing that, and also I don't even want to say that it's the same thing, because it's really not. It's not even the amount of time that you spend with the violin that I'm spending here, but I understand the idea that you have something that you have no almost no free will in, that you have to do it, that you just feel you have to do it.
Well, and that was my thought as a teenager,
Mm.
growing up, not really understanding about life, and that, life is all about choices. And there was one point, a very, very powerful moment, um, when, I was sitting in my one room basement apartment in Philadelphia, when I said to myself, you don't actually have to do this. You're fairly bright. You could probably go do something else and, not live like this. And, that, not that there was anything wrong with what, I was doing, but there are times when it's, quite trying. And it was a very, like I said, powerful moment when I sat there and said, "No, I'm going to choose this." In a lot of ways, it's a lot like marriage, where you get married to somebody, you make that promise, you make that commitment, and uh, for a lot of people, they don't realize that actually that decision and that commitment is made every single day, not once, not on a certain. That's only the first time you make that commitment, and getting up every day and being with that person, or picking up the violin, or looking at a score. I mean, before we sat here, I was I did my 20 pages, in an hour, just before we were sitting here, because that's the decision I make every single day. So, you know, for I know that there are a lot of artists actually that feel the same way, that say, geez, it's like I don't have a choice, or something like that. No, actually, you do have a
Mm.
choice. And you don't have to do it. Maybe it would be extremely painful. It would be extremely painful to lose an arm, no question.
Yeah.
But you could, you
Mm.
know, and certainly, I guess, to continue with it's sort of a morbid metaphor, but it's true. If my arm was diseased and was killing the rest of my body, I would cut it off, absolutely. And it's a similar kind of decision. If
Mm.
if this life, which is not easy to do, if this life is too much and it's making you unhappy, um, then that's not something you absolutely have to do. And I use the word happy. Happy is a kind of very complicated word, isn't it?
Yeah.
The really what uh, really what music does for me is it fulfills me, which is not the same thing. And happiness, comes from perhaps other things, more surface things, but the kind of deep fulfillment that I get that really makes me myself is such at this point that I'm happy to make that decision every day.
And it's also, I think it's in all walks of life, really, and all everything we do. There's sometimes that part of it that's not, or those days that's not, so good or not so great. But like you say, when you do make that choice, then you commit almost for those days that's not so good, or the days that you're not that motivated.
Exactly. And I can tell you, I remember bitterly, wanting to go outside and, play with my friends. It's so much harder when you're six, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
because
I
you don't
did.
understand any of those things.
Yeah, I was supposed to practice piano, but I did go out and play with my friends, and this is why I can't play the piano.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, it's not that you can't play the piano. And, I tell this to all of my students. Like,
Mm,
I am not here to make you a professional musician. That's up to you. That's up to
yeah,
your parents. Um, I am here to teach you to play the violin. What you do with it is, up to you. And, I'm here to help you and so on. And it's more about the joy of music making and the discipline and the joy also of learning how to play this instrument. And, this brings up something else, how people, you know, talk to me and say, "Oh, you're so talented," and yes, talent, comes into it, for sure. But it's very, very, very small part of it. Very small part of it. The talent to me is the ability to recognize a certain pattern and be able to imitate it. People who, can just go up to pianos and just start, playing whatever it is they just saw. That's a very, very special, thing to be able to do. But it's not going to make you a great musician. It's not even going to make you a great pianist. Lots of people who do that, they need help with their technique. They need help, with their musicianship. They need help translating, or even, reading the notes for that matter. So there's a whole lot that goes into it. All of this work, no matter how brilliant or talented you are. Um, and one of the things that I learned only later in life is actually how much work you need to do and continue to do um, as your technique expands. This is one of the only things in the world where the better you get at it, the harder you have to work.
really. I
Yeah,
know what this is so interesting. Just
yeah,
the other day, I spoke to Charles Lim. He's a neuroscientist, and he
mm,
did research on the brain, on improvisation and what happens in the brain. And he said exactly the same thing. The more, as a surgeon, also he's a surgeon, he said the more he knows, the more he realizes, uh, you know, there's more work to be done.
right, right. And the thing is, and with neurosurgery, with playing an instrument
Mhm.
in general, it's a very physical thing. So if you know how to play a G major scale, great. You can practice your G major scale. Okay. Then you have to learn your flat major scale or your C scale or something like that. And with each scale, you then know that scale, but then you have to practice that scale. And then, okay, so then you have to play that scale in octaves. And then you have to play that scale in tenths. And then you have to, play all the arpeggios and all of that. And as you expand your technique, well, now you have all of that other stuff to practice. And yes, then you get good at it and then it comes faster. But then there are other things that, it continually, keeps on going. And, if I play my scales, but I don't play my scales in octaves, my octaves don't sound very good. So you have to just keep adding on and adding on. And, the world's greatest violinist, Hilary Hahn, who I'm a huge fan of, she famously, does her 100 days of practice on Instagram, and she puts her practice sessions on
Really?
Instagram. Yeah.
Mm.
And it was so inspirational and so fascinating to me to see, like, literally one of the world's greatest violinists um, pretty constantly and consistently mess up and need to fix things.
Really?
Yeah. And that kind of go is kind of goes the same for conducting. I when I first started conducting, um I was talking to a friend of mine whose career had started to blossom, and came to the Philly Orchestra to conduct them. And I was living in Philadelphia at the time, and it was the first time he had conducted the Philadelphia Orchestra, and so he, I had been talking to some of my friends in the orchestra, and they had been, saying, like, oh, he doesn't seem so sure of himself, and of course I didn't say anything to him, but I said, hey, so how's it going? He says, I'm really confused. And I said, what why are you confused? And he said, well, it's the Philadelphia Orchestra, and they're playing out of tune, and they're not together.
Really?
And that was kind of surprising to me.
Mm.
And I'm not really quite sure what to say, because, here I am. I'm just this, up and coming conductor. What do I know? And, all of our teachers, they've all said, for years, they know the piece better than you do. So you don't have to say very much or something like that. What? They're out of tune and they're not together. What do I say? I don't want to offend them. And, the fact is that all great professional orchestras want direction, because they're human beings, and they don't, obviously they don't, play out of tune and not together at the same level as other orchestras. But we all have good ears, and we can hear when something, well, you just fix it. That's all. You're human beings, and that's what they're looking for. They're looking for, to be able to fix it. And the fact is that Hilary Hahn practices 3 hours, a day. Even, she even practices, after, a 10-hour flight or something like that in the hotel room, because she has to.
But I don't think people always realize it, because it looks so easy from, if you go to a concert, it all looks so easy, and you think,
Looks
well,
effortless.
that's established, you've practiced your whole life and now you do the concerts, but I don't think people realize how much work still goes in behind the scenes.
No, I mean, and that's, going back to what I was saying about, people, oh, you're so talented, you've been doing this for so long, you looks like you do it with your eyes closed. Very often you do it with your eyes closed. People see that, and they're like, oh, it must be nice to just show up, at an orchestra and get this, enormous fee, and play for, 40 minutes, and, get your fee to do that. No, that's not quite how it goes.
Yeah.
If you have an early morning rehearsal, the next day. I mean, I conduct much more than I play violin these days. And if I have a 10-hour flight and I have a rehearsal the next day, you better believe I'm going to be up, until the wee hours of the morning staring at my score, before or waking up early or something like that, because we all need to work, no matter what level you're at. If you are, and as a matter of fact, if you are at the highest level, you've got to work harder. That's
And
how
the
it works.
pressure, yeah, and the pressure is also then a little bit higher.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the
But
the the saying in conducting is that the orchestra figures you out in the first 5 minutes.
really,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I've spoken to a few conductors, and they all say that the orchestra, they they smell the fear.
Oh yeah. From the moment you don't even have to like wave your arms. The moment you get up on the podium.
They
and
know.
and I can tell you, middle schoolers do too, in very much the
Really?
same way.
But talking about schools, I love your approach to your students also, that you say, okay, well, I'm teaching you, but you have to decide what you want to do. Because I just recently thought about um, this also, that why is it that we're not focusing more on also students? You will get the students who really, like yourself, this is what I want to do, and to the lengths that they would go to do it. But it would be so great if there were also a way of teaching where students can just learn to play the violin, even if it's not to that level that you would go to play in a professional orchestra, or as a professional musician.
Yeah. No, I mean the trick is, and it's just a different way of thinking, and that's why I call it a trick. It's kind of a shift in perspective. Um, is to make it about the music.
Mm.
And I, why do I want these students to play well? Um, Number one, well, I misspoke actually. Not just to make it about the music. First, actually, to make it about the students. And the why do I want you to play well? Because I want you to fulfill your potential, and I want you to become the best human being uh, that's possible. Number one, and number two is this music deserves your best. And when you make it about those two things and not about, what, I can tell you, I've seen, many teachers in the public schools, and, I teach at a charter school, um, who, are frustrated that, they don't have the career that they wanted, and they, kind of settled for teaching. If you don't make it about yourself, right?
Mm.
And you don't make it about, wanting your kids to sound like professionals, or anything like that, but make it about the students and make it about the music, then those things actually follow, that sort of thing. So the, my students play very well, not because not because I tell them that they have to sound professional, not because I want them to sound professional, but because I want them to do their best, to be their best, and to make music as best they can. And it's once you shift that perspective, um, then everything else pretty much follows easily. You don't even have to think about it.
Because that's all. These are all transferable skills that you learn by by playing an instrument, and the discipline of practicing, and many
Right.
other things. I spoke to Thomas Fortner. He's also a conductor, and he used to have the I think it's in Dakota, the youth orchestra, and he said that there's so much in conducting an orchestra, a youth orchestra. It's there's so many things involved. You know, it's not just the music or the orchestra, but it's this togetherness and uh, working together. You know, different instruments working together and people coming together, or these young people coming together. And so I think it's such an important part of education to be able to not just play an instrument, but any form of art, really.
Oh, for sure. I mean, to me, actually, one of besides all of the incredible brain work, and I tell this to all my students, music, not to be, no disrespect to any of the other arts,
Mm.
but when you play music, it's actually the only thing, not just art form, but the only thing that a human being can do that actually engages the entire brain all at the same time.
Oh, yes.
And, you know, that I think, I mean, we don't have any scientific causality towards that. We do know that if you play an instrument, you get better at math, you get better at writing, you get better at reading, you get better at all sorts of things. We're not really quite sure why that happens. We know there's a causality there, but in my mind, it's because it engages every single part of your brain that there's that relationship there. So just doing it, just teaching, the kids about holding the bow and holding, the instrument and having them, read, read music and play music, just that, just being able to do that is, really, really enough for them to gain those kinds of benefits. But there are also incredible social um, and incredible social benefits uh, to the idea of working together
Mm.
and being able to play together. And um, there's a great quote by the person who started, I'm forgetting his name right now, who started the El Sistema system in
Yes,
South
I read
Africa,
about, yeah. Mm.
who, he said, an orchestra is one of the only places in the world where people from all walks of life can enter a room for the purpose of agreeing, you know, and
That's true.
I very often wonder what um, you know how the world would be if governments actually came into the room with the same attitude, uh, and
Absolutely, yeah.
and how important that is to teach. And I think it's one of the reasons why people love going to live concerts, not just because of the musical energy, but also because they are witnessing a level of agreement that goes up to the level of art. And you're when you're talking about this split second timing of being able to join a musical line when you've been resting or something like that, and you are actually not just agreeing with them, you're learning about compassion because you literally have to put yourself in another person's shoes to be able to play that the rest of that phrase
Oh,
with them.
that's true, yeah.
And so you're learning about, you're engaging all parts of your brain to be able to do it. You're learning about how to agree with people, and you're learning about compassion. I mean, what better things are there?
Exactly, exactly. And actually, I spoke a few years ago, I spoke to um, a guy. Sorry, I can't remember his name, but he revived. It's him and his father. I think they revived the lyra. You know, the ancient lyra, the Greek
Oh yeah.
lyra. Yeah. And we were talking. I did an interview with him about the lyra and why they sort of made replicas of the ancient lyra, and they had people playing it. You know, they're teaching people to play it now. And he actually told me, because we talked about the it's such a handy instrument and it's really so easy to play. But he said that in ancient Greek or ancient Greece, the schools, you had to, everybody in the school had to have a lyra. You went to school with a lyra.
Right.
And if you couldn't play the lyra, you were seen as uneducated.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the same in Europe, in the 17 and the 1800s. If you didn't have a piano, in the in your living room, what were you doing? What were you
Yeah.
doing with, you know? And so did they get a tortoiseshell? How did they do that?
I think they no they didn't do it with a tortoiseshell. They had
Yeah.
somebody remake according to the specifications, but of course they don't do. I don't know if they do it now. I see them. I still follow them on Instagram. I mean, they've grown in
Oh, that's
popularity,
amazing.
and a lot of people. And also the lady that I spoke to, who initially who I saw on Instagram with the lyra, she's a classical guitarist, and she took the lyra and she learned to play the lyra. And we were talking about how easy, is it easy, and it's apparently not as complicated, but they've been
Mm.
producing these lyras and having people make it, and now at the time that they are now, and this is a matter of 3 years. They make the most beautiful lyras now. You can find them on
Nice.
Instagram. I'll send you the link. You can have a look.
Please.
But yeah, but it's so interesting. And I thought to myself, and it's a beautiful sound also. And I thought
Sure.
afterwards, it's so interesting that it just disappeared, the lyra, that we didn't. It's not really part of orchestras, and it's not really part of.
Well, I wouldn't say so. I mean, it hasn't disappeared. It's evolved, really.
Oh, to the harp, you would say.
Well, to the harp, to the guitar, to
Oh, yeah,
everything.
yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
all of those instruments,
Mm.
oh, and not just the lyra, but all of the stringed instruments from the East, really. um, you know, and they evolved into the bowed instruments, and there are many
Yeah.
similarities. You can see the evolution as it goes along. I mean, this brings up. This is a paper I actually have my students in orchestra write about in the first year. I do half the class. I do a little lecture about how we've been making music literally since before we were human. And there's evidence even of the fact that our the one of the centers, like I said, playing music engages the entire brain. But one of the main centers that it engages is older than the part of the brain where we form words. And
Really?
really, and there is supposition, therefore, there's no way we can possibly prove this, but there is supposition, therefore, that we were actually making music and perhaps singing as a form of communication before we were making words. And
Oh,
uh,
interesting.
that's how we communicate. And they have found uh, bone flutes. People taking like a femur or some other bone and making it, drilling holes in it in a systematic way where clearly it was used as, and the flutes still work, in the
Wow.
way that they were supposed to. And and this was found in a cave where they're pretty certain that the only people living there were not people, they were Neanderthals. And yeah, and
Yeah.
so we have been, it's something that's innate in us. It's not, something that's, just cultural, or that is in terms, going back in terms of the pandemic, that's, not essential. It's absolutely essential for us as human beings.
Yeah. No, I 100% believe that.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, that's interesting to me. And again, I have my students, I teach my students about that, and have them do some research, and write a paper.
That's
You know,
amazing.
two
Yeah.
two paragraphs. They're the middle school students.
Oh, okay.
Not five
But,
pages. I'm not that.
oh, okay. But Gabriel, what was the so you always felt you wanted to do conducting, but was there a specific point where you decided, okay, now I'm going to study conducting?
Oh, it's funny. Um, I mean, like I said, I was sort of a conductor before I was a violinist,
Mhm.
and then I started conduct. I started playing in orchestras when I was 8. So I had a long time to watch conductors, and I was very, very lucky. My first violin teacher was also my first conductor. His name was Jonathan Strasser,
Really?
and he brought me to this music camp where there was only one orchestra there. So there were a lot of really not very pleased teenagers in that orchestra, uh,
Can
who
imagine. Yeah.
were like, "Who are you?" and he knew I could keep up with them, which is why he brought me there, um, and so he was my first conductor, and so I got to watch him, and then I started playing professionally when I was 14, and there were a lot of different styles, a lot of different conductors, and I just carefully watched, and as my career as a violinist kept on going, I kept on um, listening to music, and kept on that initial urge to move with the music, which came from my father dancing around, and me pretending I was Mickey, kept on going. And after a while, the one thing that really, really intimidated me was reading a score, and learning how to read a score. I just couldn't. I would look at a score and I'm like, how the heck do you do this? Like, how can you make all of this stuff out? And it really, like I said, it intimidated me for a long time. And when I was 19, I started a string quartet called the Ponte String Quartet. And the cellist in the quartet, his name is Miles Jordan, and they still exist. They live up in Maine now, and he taught me a whole lot. He was quite a bit older than I was. I think he was in his 30s when I was 19, and we started the group together. And I so there, it was less intimidating. I was looking at a score. It was only 4 parts. And I just started doing analysis with that. And then I was like, okay, this makes sense. I'm able to do this. And so after I left the quartet, I was in my mid-20s. Um, I was, kind of a little aimless, doing gigs, and still, wondering what to do. And a friend of mine gave me this video. So again, it was another documentary that
Oh,
actually
okay.
got this. Um, a video called Great Conductors of the Past. And uh, I watched this video and I had another, you know, aha, this is what I want to do. I want to do that. The same reaction I had to Picasso.
Oh,
And
amazing. That after all
amazing.
those years, yeah. No,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
And so it's like 20 years really in between. And um, so I was playing in an orchestra that played on the beach every week. It was an orchestra called the Orchestra of St. Peter by the Sea, one of the funniest
Oh,
names
okay.
um, yeah, I'd ever heard. And I was just playing with them, and not quite sure how I got that gig. Somebody recommended me, and so I started playing with them. And the conductor's name was Alphonse Stevenson. Still is. He's still doing it. And he had conducted a chorus line on Broadway for 10 years.
Okay.
And so I just decided, what the heck, I'm just going to go for it. I approached him and I said, do you teach conducting? And I decided to go at it that way, that I would ask him, for lessons, and maybe, he would let me, conduct the orchestra or something like that. And he was hysterical. He saw right through me. he
Really?
he said, I don't really teach conducting, but you seem to be a bright boy. Uh, do you know the beat patterns? And I said, yeah, sure. And he said, can you read a score? And I said, yeah. And it's like, well, what are you really asking me for then?
Oh.
I said, well, I guess I'm asking to conduct your orchestra. He said, fine. I'll assign you pieces. We had one rehearsal for each one of the concerts, and it was done
Wow.
in the afternoon. Basically, we would have a 3 hour rehearsal, take a dinner break, and then do the concert. And that was once a week. And he says, I'll assign you a couple of pieces. You can play the rest of the time. And I'll hire you as the assistant conductor and the librarian for the summer. I'll pay you such and such amount. I don't even remember what it was. And if you stink, I'll fire you. Okay.
Really? Okay.
Are we agreed? I said, yeah, sure. So the first piece he gave me was the Mozart Magic Flute Overture. And I went to work and studied it and, practiced. And, one of the things a lot of people don't realize is that, you know, a lot of conducting is making it up as you go along. And as you progress, you are able to just instinctively make a certain motion the way you want the sound to come out. But when you're just starting out, you really need to like figure out like exactly what you're
Okay.
going to do, because you don't really know quite what to do, and you have to think about it. And so, Magic Flute Overture sound, starts off with this big, chord in the brass, and okay, so what's the quality of that chord? You don't want it to sound like Shostakovich, right? You want it to sound like Mozart, and you want it to sound round and beautiful, and a certain length, and so on. And so I practiced this motion to get this perfect round Mozartian sound out. And then you cut them off, and then you have bum bum. You want that eighth note to sound a certain way and have it be perfectly together, right? And then you do it again, bum ba, cut off, be da da dum, and get the triplet together in the first violin so that everybody knows, where to do it. And it's sort of a typical audition excerpt for conductors. He knew what he was doing when he assigned that to me,
Really? Mm.
and I worked on it, as much as I could muster. I had a week to learn it, and it's a 5-6 minute overture or something like that. And so I get up on the podium. It's the first time I'm ever on a podium, right?
Wow.
And Alphonse like positions himself like literally right here, ready to push me off in case if I stink, like, we've
Then you're
got like
gone.
limited rehearsal time.
Yeah.
That's what's on the program. That's the music that's on there. He has to, be able to, shove me off and take over in case, something should happen. So he's standing right behind me. And I'm like, okay. And so and luckily these are all, seasoned professionals, first of all, who have been playing for years. I've played this overture many, many times. And not number one, and they're already all my friends. I had been playing in the orchestra for
Oh,
over.
yes.
So they
Yeah.
all, want me to, do well and are excited. And that helped
Yeah.
huge amount. And so I get up and I look around, everybody's smiling. Okay, all right, I'm welcomed already. Like we were saying, the first 5 minutes, the
Yeah.
orchestra can smell your fear. In this particular case, they could smell it, but they wanted
That
to.
helped you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Isn't it
exactly.
amazing that that was
Yeah,
your first, that was the first experience?
right. And then I give this upbeat, and out comes this beautiful round Mozart
Wow.
chord, and I cut them off, and in the pause, Alphonse leans forward and whispers in my ear and says, "Don't be too good," which made me laugh. And,
Oh,
and then completely relaxed and just went through the piece, and it was like no problem, no problem.
but this is just so clear that it's because this has been you envisioned it, and it's your dream, and you wanted to do it, and I think that's part of that energy that you took to the podium.
Yeah, and the it has never not been a joy
Mm.
to do it, and I found it. I mean, there's really no less preparation time. There's really no less, uh, you know, exactness, but I found it to be more natural, for me to be a conductor than to be a violinist.
Really?
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah. And I know that, I've met lots of violinists, um, who want to make the switch, who try to make the switch, with varying degrees of success. And you know, I think it just depends on who you are and what you want to do, and um, just what comes down. And in that sense, I maybe we could talk about talent in that way, that I as much of a talent for violin as I have, um, I seem to have, you know, it feels easier to me to be on the podium than to play. I love playing. I still play. I'm concertmaster of the local orchestra here, and that's something. Um, I these days I do so much. Like I said, I do so much more conducting than playing. I have to intentionally,
Ah,
um,
okay.
make
Mhm.
myself play at this point. Um, but yeah, conducting just came more naturally to me.
But so wonderful that you had, and I think this is also part of that, um, the drive that you had with the violin. Now, also when you started conducting, that you and at the time where you knew this is it and this is what I want to do.
Yeah, no question. I mean, anybody who wants to conduct, you don't start out as a conductor.
Mhm.
Um, Really, the first thing you should do, is master your instrument, and get all of the musicianship stuff. But basically, you have to be a fully formed musician, and then you start your training as a conductor.
Okay.
So
Mm.
it's, basically what I tell everybody is, it's a 20-year process to become a fully formed musician. And then, probably another 10 years or so of really concentrated work to, get to be where you're comfortable being a conductor.
And it's, this is also what we sometimes don't realize. You see the conductor in front of the orchestra and you think it just happened for him, but it's many, many years of studying and of
I mean, and
being
and
a musician.
exactly. And the way I like to talk about it is, so I just did 20 pages before we sat down. It's 20 pages in an hour. It's probably about 3 or 4 minutes of music.
Really?
Yeah. And if the music's going fast, then obviously it's going to be more pages than that. But I would say I can probably do an average of about 5 minutes of music for each hour. And I am lightning fast now.
Wow.
I, it used to be much slower than that. Just absorbing everything that's in the score. And now that I conduct ballet, it's actually taking even longer. I mean, that was 20 pages of score just musically. When you conduct ballet, you literally have to learn the score twice because you're learning the score musically and then you have to know what's going on choreographically at the same time.
Mm.
Yeah. And I was talking recently to a friend of mine um, is a symphonic conductor. Um, and I was telling him all about, the ins and outs of ballet conducting. And he's like, yeah, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Really.
Really?
Yeah. And I was also just talking to
Mm.
Andrew Sill, who just retired from New York City Ballet, conducting New York City Ballet. And we were talking about, I mean, being a conductor is kind of a small club as it is. Being a ballet conductor is like one of the tiniest niches that
Really?
there is. Yeah. And like, kind of, I mean, one of the things that I want to do um, is uh, really bring that niche much more to the forefront. Um, all of my education in conducting ballet has been on the job learning.
Really?
Yeah, I've studied with some of the great, um, I've had the privilege of studying with some of the great conducting teachers. Ken Kiesler, Gustav Meyer, Larry Radcliffe, all of these guys have taught, you know, world famous conductors now. And not a single one of them talked about ballet conducting or any of this stuff.
Really? Mm.
And Gustav, just before he passed, published his book on conducting. He's got 2 paragraphs in it about ballet conducting. And it's just not something they teach. And as a matter of fact, there are some of the things that they teach which are, great and wonderful and absolutely stuff you should do when you're a symphonic conductor that are exactly the opposite of what you should do as a ballet conductor.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And it's just an example.
Yeah.
So they teach, and quite rightly, and it's so incredibly effective that number one lesson is that the conductor makes no sound. You have to understand that the orchestra is making sound, and this is true in ballet conducting too. But the lesson that they teach from that is that you're really not doing anything. Especially when you're talking about, say, the Philadelphia Orchestra or something like that. As I said before, they say, they know the piece probably better than you do, and they've played it 1,000 times. And yes, while they're asking for direction, it's true. At a certain point, you should just let go and let them play and stay out of the way. And really, the first rule of doing that is, like the doctor's rule. It's not that you're trying to do everything for them. Really, the first rule is do no harm, and allow them to play to their potential, and then fix what's needed after that. And so, when I was conducting in Albuquerque at the Albuquerque Youth Symphony program, I used to tell the kids, no, you need to do this. You need to play. You need to move. You need to breathe. Watch each other. Breathe with each other. And I used to do this thing I called scrambled orchestra, where I would put them all completely out of place and not facing each other, and saying, okay, now you have to play Beethoven's Fifth with no conductor. And you have to learn how to breathe and cue each other, and basically treat the orchestra like it's one big chamber group. And what Ken used to say, I'm sure he still says it, and it's a wonderful metaphor. The conductor is the silent chamber music partner that helps people along with it. And in ballet conducting, all of that goes completely out the window.
In what way?
Well, it's the one and only time. I mean, okay, yes, if you're conducting an opera, you're in the pit, but they can hear the singer, and they can follow the singer, and they can
yes, of course,
do that.
Yeah.
But in most pits, in almost all pits, they have no idea what's going on the stage, and so they are completely and utterly dependent on you. And so that's number one. Number two, in most pits, they can't hear each other and they can't see each other. And so the whole idea of allowing them to play like it's chamber music when they can't see and they can't hear each other, and the Pit and Ballet West, they have sound barriers that are in place.
Oh, really?
And there some.
But for what reason? What reason do they have that?
Oh, to protect everybody's hearing, because you're in this really tight space.
Yeah.
And so the basses were all the way over there, like on the opposite end. Okay, can't see or hear the trombones that are like all the way to the other side of the pit. And very often they have stuff that's together. And so, the whole idea of, why, Gabriel, my teachers, Ken would say, why are you using both hands? You're just doing mirroring, and, you don't have to do that. Do different things with your hands, independence of the hands. Well, the basses and the trombones don't really have a frame of reference otherwise, and they can't see everything. So,
but this is but so you have to know every single instrument there, what their purpose is, or what they about to play.
Exactly. You have to know every single instrument. You have to know, who's together with whom, who is not together with whom, and make sure that they can see exactly what you're doing, because you're hardly even looking at them, because you're always looking up at stage.
Of course.
And going with what the dancers are doing. The dancers are like the concerto soloists, and they might decide to slow something down or speed something up. And uh, I've conducted the Nutcracker 80 times now,
Wow.
which makes me,
Mm.
truthfully,
Mm.
makes me actually still a baby when it comes to doing that, because Nutcracker is the thing we ballet conductors do by far the most, and the really experienced ones have done it probably thousands of times.
I never
And
realized that, but yeah, if it's
yeah,
done so many times. Mm.
yeah, I mean, Ballet West, we do like more than 30 performances, every year of that. And so, but I've done it 80 times now, so I don't even have a score in front of me, anymore. And that's not because I'm some kind of genius or something like that. I've just done it so
But you
many
have.
times. you
But
know.
I mean, do you do Nutcracker certain times of the year, also so towards the end of the year? But and in between, you do many other things as well. So you remembered. Can you remember then when you get back to it? Does your memory kick in of exactly what you're supposed to do?
Oh, I mean, I've done it so many times, and I've done it in so many different ways. And going back to brain work, when you do things in different ways,
Oh, yeah.
that really, really embeds it. And I was lucky enough when I started doing Nutcrackers, um, to be able to do 3 different productions of it at the same time.
Oh, okay.
So the week before Thanksgiving is with Clyde Adams Ballet, and that's one set of choreography and one set of cuts and one like
Yeah.
where the music differs in that way. And then the very next week, in the same hall, even is Ballet West, and they have actually the original choreography. Ballet West, a lot of people don't know that Ballet West was the original um, revival of the Nutcracker. Willem Christensen brought it back in the
Oh, I
30s.
didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. I've
and
heard of Ballet West. I've heard
yeah,
and never seen them, but I've heard of them.
yeah, and that's they were the ones that started the yearly tradition of
Oh, I
Nutcrackers that all
see.
ballet companies base their budgets on now.
Really? Mm.
And so doing that, and then in the middle of the Ballet West run, there was another ballet company called Imagine Ballet up here in Ogden, that also does a production. So there were times, and it's going to be true this year too, although with a different, with a different company, where on like Friday I'll do one production, and then on Saturday I'll do a double of another production, and then on Sunday I'll do a double of another production.
Do you
And
get mixed up in, or is it set for
so
you?
far so good.
Oh, okay.
But no, but I mean seriously, I'll do the double of and when I say a double, I'll do an afternoon performance and an evening performance. And then on Sunday, uh, the on Sunday I'll do the other performance, but I'll go back into the score,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
for that
Mm.
performance. Say, okay, I know which one I'm doing now, and it's different choreography and so on. And this year, I'm lucky enough. I'm actually going to travel to Chicago in the middle of the Ballet West run
Oh,
and do
wow.
yet another
Mm.
production, Ballet 5/8, it's called, in Chicago, and their production is called Beyond the Nutcracker. So I'm excited to be able to do that.
But about, I mean, you talked about the ballet and all the different things you're doing, but what are the wishes for you for the future, or what is the dream still? You've already made 2 dreams come true, but what is the next step for you?
Well, I think continuing right now is funny because Andy at New York City Ballet, he just retired. And, a lot of, in any job, there are positives and negatives. And, we talked about, all of that. And he's just such a great, warm, welcoming person and so positive in everything. And he just said, I'm kind of getting, tired of these challenges that, I've, seen over the years. And he's been doing it for like 30 years, basically. I've only been conducting ballets for 7 years. So,
But
and
still, 7 years is,
well,
yeah,
it's some time.
yeah.
I feel like I'm getting good at it,
Mm.
but I, for me, those challenges are still like, oh, I want to, make sure I get this. And so the really just furthering my knowledge in the genre and um I guess really being able to, master that craft. I'm, you know, I I in my estimation, I would say I'm like halfway there, maybe, another few years doing this, and I feel like I would be able to say I could just go anywhere and just
Mhm.
do Swan Lake, and it just wouldn't be a problem. I mean, I'm going to do my second Swan Lake with Orlando Ballet in October, and there are people who have done. This will be actually a different production of Swan Lake than Ballet West did a few years ago, and so there'll be a new choreography, and there are people who could get on the podium and say, okay, I know where this person's going, I know what they're about to do, and um, the there are a few famous moments. Rose Adagio, the 27 fouets that
Oh,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
the Black Swan does, and all of that you everybody can point to and say, okay, I know that. I am starting to know some of the less well known moments. And, when I'm at the point where, I can just get on the podium and I know exactly where everybody's supposed to be and what they're supposed to do, then I will admit that. And that's for me, that would be the ideal future, to be able to, travel, around the world and, just do this and just enjoy it, you know.
But do you have the patience to, because all these things takes years. So do you have patience, or do you find yourself sometimes really being thinking, oh, I want it to happen now?
I get those feelings, like
Okay.
anyone else. But
Mm.
really, uh, I've been a musician for 50 years, and so I know how to play the long game,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and uh, and that's number one. And number two is really, again, it's a shift in perspective. Um, you know, the best things in life are those things that you work really hard for a long
Exactly.
time. And you never, one of the great things about the art form is that you actually never reach the end. And so, like life, it's really about enjoying the process. And I tell all of my students, if if they're thinking about doing this for a living, the first thing I tell them is that you have to enjoy the process, because it's not all about, jet setting around the world and, playing in great concert halls and, enjoying, people, wanting to sign your program and all of that. That all takes, an hour or two. Um, the 3 to 4 hours a day of practice or studying, and all of that. If you don't enjoy that process, you're not
Yeah.
going to enjoy this. And so, I have learned. I have at first, just completely enjoyed the process, and I have learned to get used to it and say, this is a privilege. I'm sitting in front of, Prokofiev's score for Romeo and Juliet, and I'm getting to learn this again. And uh, watching some of the world's greatest dancers, um, perform this and perhaps even be able to conduct it. How much of a privilege is that? That's like a
Okay.
huge, gigantic privilege. And,
Mm.
and so I, approach that every single day and make that choice.
Mm. It's that sort of appreciating the moment where you are in, that that idea. But I'm thinking now that you talk about the process, the whole process. I spoke to a singer-songwriter in South Africa a while ago, and he said something very beautiful, and that is that he looks back on his work, on his recordings, and the songs that he's written, and for him it's almost like a journal. He can see himself, he can relate to that time, or he can look at that time and understand where he was when he wrote it, and when he composed the music for it or wrote the music for
Right.
it. And I think it must be for you also to look back and see, that path that you went on, and where you are now.
Oh no, I actually just passed the spot on the score where the last time I was doing it, my daughter, um, saw where I was in the score. I was like, somewhere else, and she happened to be in my studio here. And she took the pen, the pencil, and wrote on the side of the score, "You got this, Dad."
Oh, that is so sweet.
And I will never ever erase that.
Oh, that is so sweet.
You know,
Oh, how old is your daughter?
she's 16 now, and I guess she
Oh,
was 4
that's lovely.
at the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's just so,
Mm.
and again, it's um and yes, sometimes you have to make the choice and, kind of, say, here's a reminder. This is what you get to do, and you're getting paid for it. You know, there's a moment in the Nutcracker, when, you just let the harp play and you don't actually have to do anything. And every single time, all 80 times that I've done it, the flowers are, going around. And I take that moment to take this in. It's like, wow, world-class orchestra, world-class sets, world-class dancers, incredible harp player. How lucky am I?
Okay. Mm.
You know?
But I admire you for the fact that you've achieved so much and that you do so much, but that you can still take that moment and appreciate where you are. I think this is a beautiful, uh, it's a beautiful thing that you have, that you are able to do that.
No, it to me, no matter what you do, forget about music. Understanding that, all of the rewards of your work, are really not worth it unless you enjoy that process. And, I feel like so many people in the world would benefit from understanding that. And, yeah, so, uh, it's just a perspective to cultivate. That's all you need to do.
But this was so amazing to talk to you. It was so easy to talk to you. You've got such an interesting way of storytelling also.
Thank you.
I was absolutely glued to everything that you were telling. I think it's such a beautiful story because of how how you got to play the violin, and there's something very relaxing about you. There's something very much like you do your thing, and you know when it's the time. And I think it's a really a beautiful story.
I appreciate it, and it's very easy to talk to you. You're a fantastic interviewer. I
Oh,
really,
really? Thank you.
yeah.
No, I love this platform that I can get to hear all these stories. So it's great. But
Yeah.
Gabriel, thank you so much for your time. And whenever you come to Vienna, and I'm hoping that you come and conduct a ballet here in Vienna.
Oh, that would be so awesome. I did take my youth symphony on tour to Vienna, and we
Really?
yeah, in Albuquerque Youth Symphony Program, we played at the Mozarteum, and
Oh,
the the we before I had the unmitigated nerve to bring Beethoven's Fifth
oh,
to,
okay.
to Vienna. I also brought some American programming as well. I was like, oh, what were you thinking? But we were able to go to the graveyard and pay our respects to Beethoven, and I stood there and said, I'm so sorry. Thank you. But the next time I come to Vienna, you bet, I'll come to conduct a ballet.
Definitely. My son is a ballet dancer, so you can spot him on the stage.
Oh, there you go. There you
Oh,
go.